Well, good evening, folks. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're going to start off with a prayer from Councillor B. Kenny, and that's going to be followed by our national anthem by Mr. Joe Longfellow. Councillor Kenny.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for thy blessing. Almighty God, you have given us this good land as our heritage. May we prove ourselves a people mindful of your generosity and glad to do your will. Enrich our citizens with your heavenly grace and prosper them with happiness. Help this council and staff make wise decisions for the benefit of all. This we ask in your precious name. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. Car ton bras se porte l'épée, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joel. As always, well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Members of Council, we have three agendas before us this evening. We have our special council meeting agenda, which is going to be entertaining an application for official plan amendment. Department of Planning and Development Services, report number 2014-51. The subject, a public meeting report, official plan amendment number 1. The second is the Committee of the Whole meeting, which you have an agenda on, as well as the items contained within. And then following that is going to be our meeting, our regular meeting of council. And we're expecting that most of the agenda items in the Committee of the Whole meeting will be ratified. Dan, you may want to have a seat. I'm going to amend tonight's agenda here for this part of the meeting to allow the delegations to come on up first. I know we have some people from out of town, so instead of having them, I know they're probably very interested in sticking around for the entire meeting, we'll get them in and out as quickly as possible. So with that, I will ask members of council for leave to allow that to happen, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Bodner, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. So what I'm going to do right now is, first off, I'm going to ask for a motion to confirm the agenda. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Desmarais, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? With no disclosures, and so noted by the clerk, we'll now move on to our delegations. Our first delegation is Ms. Angela Morgan. Angela is the Zone 3 Director for the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, and she is here to present the E.A. Danby Award for the city's 5C service program. Members of council, it is listed on your agenda, page number 39. Angela, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and thank you for rearranging your agenda to hear me first. I do my fair share of council meetings as well, so I appreciate that. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to present to you the E.A. Danby Award on behalf of the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario. The objective of the E.A. Danby Award is to recognize and honor municipalities that have demonstrated outstanding achievement through innovation with respect to municipal management activities or practices implemented for the purpose of delivering improved municipal programs and services. The award has been named to recognize the significant achievement of AMCTO's first president, E.A. Danby, who was instrumental in establishing the association and its commitments to improvements in municipal government through education, training, and knowledge sharing. This award was presented to the City of Port Colborne staff at the 2014 annual conference of AMCTO that was held in Niagara Falls in June, and I am pleased to take this opportunity this evening to present it to all of Council on behalf of AMCTO.
Yeah, I'm going to say a few words. Well, thank you, Angela, and I kind of feel guilty accepting this because this is not myself or council winning this award. This is more deserving by staff. Mr. Heil, who's not here, by the way, this evening, he's on vacation, and we're represented by, I guess, our new CAO, Chief Cartwright. Now that can be dangerous. But Chief, thank you for coming up and accepting this award with me. Just quickly, I do want to thank, as I did a few meetings ago, members of staff, because quite frankly, the 5C service program that was brought forward by both council and the CAO, and of course, everything that falls from the 5C service program to allow our residents, our customers, to not only be afforded, but to enjoy a level of service second to none here in the city of Port Colborne. The accolades and, of course, this award belong to you guys, belong to our senior staff as well as all our staff throughout the city's operation, whether it be here at City Hall, whether it be at the yard, whether it be at the facilities or out in the street, paving roads and of course, different things like that. And even some of our I'll call it our hired help, our consultants, and of course those contractors that work on behalf of the community. This belongs to all you folks. We get it often, members of council, myself included. Yes, we do get the kicks once in a while, but of late we've been getting a lot of kudos on the job that our staff has been doing, and I think a lot of that's attributed to the 5C service program. And for that, each and every one of you deserve a great pat in the back and a job well done. Please go back to your teams within your respective areas of discipline and pass that message along, and the message that this award, in fact, is won and achieved by you folks. And congratulations to you guys. Thanks a lot. And thank you, Angela. You can leave now. Now, where are you going back to?
I work for the City of Burlington. I live in Dundas, but I think
Okay.
we're going to have dinner here. My husband.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, we have some great restaurants, so enjoy. Thank you. Our second delegation this evening, members of council, Mr. Montopoli has decided not to come out this evening. He's resolved his issue. And therefore, we have our third delegation. Where is she? Elizabeth, where are you? I don't see her here. Elizabeth Madronich, who is supposed to be here on the agenda to speak about the Roselawn Center for the Arts rates and fees, request to maintain rates previously paid for the Canadian Author Series. Members of council, it is listed on your agenda, page 43. Councillor Bodner.
Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering whether with the change in the order, yes, that she might have thought that the other meetings were going to go on for a while.
Okay.
So I would ask that if she does show up, we
Sure.
would accept her as a...
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bodner. So now, Dan, you're up. We'll now move on to the public hearing under the Planning Act. We have an application for official plan amendment. Department of Planning and Development Services, report number 2014-51. And the subject, once again, is a public meeting report, official plan amendment number 1. Mr. Aquilina, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and those in attendance this evening. The purpose of this meeting is being held pursuant to Section 17 and 26 of the Planning Act. It is to consider a city-initiated official plan amendment number 1 to the city's new official plan, which was approved by this council in 2012 and subsequently by the region and as well by the Ontario Municipal Board in 2013. The notice tonight was given in accordance with Section 17 of the Planning Act as well as Ontario Regulation 543/06. Notice was posted within the local newspaper. That occurred on July 17th. We also had a notice on the city's website, which was there up until midnight last night. We noticed that it expired, and we reposted that again on the city's website. Council will know that there is no requirement to actually put the notice on the website. We do that as a courtesy. The explanation this evening, Mr. Mayor, to be followed is I will present the official plan amendment through the planning report that is on council's agenda. We will then open up the floor to any members of the public that wish to address council. Prior to that, if any council member or the mayor has any questions to myself, that is the opportunity to do so. I'll then give you an announcement respecting written notice of passage of the proposed amendment and an explanation of future meetings required for this proposed amendment. Mr. Mayor, it's a lot easier to kind of summarize the proposed amendment, and I have done so through a PowerPoint presentation. The first change that is being proposed is one that is in regards to the Westwood Park secondary plan. You'll see there is mapping highlighted by the arrows pointing to two different areas that we did not make the change when this was brought forward for approval to council. This amendment will clarify those mappings within the official plan. Another matter to be considered this evening are map changes to Schedule A. And you will see this pertains to, it's very small here, this area here, which is the property owned by Port Colborne Quarries dealing with the hotel that was approved by council. It was previously designated as light industrial. Through the changes in the mapping, it was inadvertently changed to urban residential. The amendment proposes to bring that back to light industrial. In this case, because it's a new official plan, employment industrial. The lands to the east of that were classified inadvertently mineral aggregate extraction in the new official plan. We want to bring that back to what it really should be, to industrial employment. The next slide will actually give you the more details of the two areas that I have referred to. The other interesting thing is that on this schedule in the report, the lands that are not shaded in are also designated mineral extraction. We want to remove that as well and put that back to what it was in the 1978 official plan as being industrial. And that just highlights the changes that I just referred to. The next amendment is in regards to garden suites. The Planning Act was changed from 10 years to now allowing it for 20 years. We want to then amend the plan to conform to what the Planning Act says. Many of the changes that we're also proposing are more grammatical in nature, and council will be aware that in any document, whether it's initiated by a consultant or if staff does it, and in this case the city staff prepared this official plan, there is always instances where there are grammatical errors, there are issues with formatting, numerical indications that we like to clarify, and as well what we like to actually address is that if there are any changes of that nature, very minor nature, that the official plan has language in it to then allow staff to make those changes without actually having a formal planning process to make those changes. Council is aware that previously I had indicated that we will be bringing forward policy changes with regards to medical marijuana. Council will recall that we had an actual amendment to our zoning bylaw to deal with these within the rural and agricultural areas of the city. I indicated at that time that we would also have proper policies within our industrial employment designation. What this does is actually does that. We then will allow and recognize medical marijuana production facilities within the industrial employment designation of the municipality. We also will add a definition of that. Council will want to pay particular attention. There are no actual setback requirements. That will be addressed when the zoning bylaw amendment is put in place or proposed to be put in place for medical marijuana facilities. The final change is this corridor here, which is on Fraser Street. The 1978 official plan had this area as commercial. When we made the change to the official plan, and actually when the official plan was before council in 2006, this area here was changed to urban residential. We want to go back to what it was in 1978 and change this to downtown commercial, given the existing fabric that's there and the uses, that we'll actually recognize what actually is there today. They're mainly commercial in nature. Mr. Mayor, members of council, that is a summary of the proposed changes. The only comments that we have received, and there has been none from members of the public, is with regards to the region of Niagara. They in general support what we're doing, and they also made the indication that they have exemption parameters that they actually can entertain, and they are on the cusp of telling us that it will not require regional approval. What council will do is if they approve this, it will not have to go to the region of Niagara, being the upper tier municipality, for final approval. That were the only comments received, Mr. Mayor. That does conclude my planning report. Does any member of council have any questions to myself?
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Members of council, any questions or comments? The only question I have, Dan, is any of these areas that you're amending, do they fall into any of these CIPs?
No, Mr. Mayor, they don't.
Okay. No further questions? Mr. Aquilina?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I would like to read the following before we open the floor up to members of the public. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed official plan is adopted, the person or public body may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Members of the gallery, are there any comments from you, members of the public? Questions? If you guys just want to come on up, state your name, your address, and the floor is all yours. Mr. Wells, welcome.
Mayor, council, staff, gallery. Couple questions I have and a couple concerns I have. One of the questions I have for Dan or whomever can answer it is that on the change on the industrial lands, I don't know if I could use your PowerPoint, Dan. Go back to this one. Yeah. The highlighted yellow section there has two designations within the official plan. On one of the schedules, on Schedule A, on Schedule C of the official plan, it's designated as a petroleum resource area, not a mineral aggregate. But then on Schedule A of the plan, it's identified as mineral aggregate. So there's a double designation within the official plan that should be corrected. If it's designated like this, then Schedule C would have to be changed as well as Schedule A.
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, we will have to make those changes as well. The key is it needs to go away from mineral aggregate. So if there's any other schedule within the official plan that says so, that would also be changed as well.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you, Dan.
as long as the drawing is changed.
Yes.
Yeah, so just bringing that to the attention. The other concern or the issues I have, as council knows, there had been an issue in regards to the rezoning of Quarry 1. That's the quarry above the yellow highlighted area. A portion of that quarry was going to be, and that quarry is under review of the OMB. So I have some concerns in regards to that rezoning of that area, and as far as goes for the official plan. And I would suggest that we wait for the OMB, which we expect to hear this month, prior to approving these changes, these amendments, so that we can incorporate the amendments of the OMB into the plan, into the new plan. The other issue I have with regards to this is the official plan is to be a visionary document, a document that guides the community, helps the community see what it's going to look like in the future. And this entire area here, one of the reasons for the redesignation of the corner portion, that's the red portion, to allow a hotel, was to accommodate teams, sports teams, visitors to the area, which would be enjoying the community center, the health and wellness center, the ballparks, the pitches, all of that event. So this area is really being developed into a very high intense sports area. And if we have a site plan agreement that's in place, came in place in 1982 in regards to the rehabilitations of these quarries. And that is not reflected in the official plan at all. So I would ask council, I would ask planning to reconsider the official plan for the final designation of the quarries that are there, what the purpose of those are as a guidance. They can be changed later on, but as it stands right now they are aggregates. We know that Quarry 1 is not being mined. We know that Quarry 2 is not being mined, and only Quarry 3 is being mined. So from that perspective, Quarry 1 and Quarry 2 should be undergoing progressive rehabilitation to be a passive lake, as states in our site-specific agreement, the site plan agreement. So I'm asking that should be reflected in the official plan as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Aquilina, any comments?
Mr. Mayor, the comments we heard this evening are in regards to the quarry property. This has no bearing on the actual proposal that's before council this evening. Yes, there's an Ontario Municipal Board decision that's waiting, but that is dealing with the use specific to the quarry property. To tie up an official plan proposal for lands to the south, it's not part and parcel to this amendment this evening. So I'd have to respectfully take the comments from Mr. Wells, and we can address those in the recommendation report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Harry, what was your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 548 Highway 3 East.
Okay, good.
It's that black spot inside the yellow.
Thank you, Harry. Jack, you're up. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
You got it.
Council, staff, and public. The comments I have are between the two schedules Mr. Wells referred to. My name is Jack Halinga. I live at 770 Highway 3 East, and I have a vested interest in this area in that I actually share over 1,400 feet of property line with a mineral aggregate resource, and actually sit on a mineral aggregate resource not designated as an aggregate resource in the official plan because it wouldn't be a viable mineral aggregate being so close to the provincial highway. However, the Schedule B plan designated, or it is titled Quarry Lands. However, the property that is highlighted on Schedule B are actually partially owned by Port Colborne Quarries and partially owned by Valet. And the yellow, as I understand, is Valet property. And the designation of that plan then should probably reflect that. The lands to be redesignated from urban residential, industrial employment, when you look at the permitted uses, doesn't specifically say hotel, whereas highway commercial does include hotel, and for the property in red, that property might more appropriately be designated as highway commercial as opposed to industrial employment. And since we are going through an official plan amendment and my interest in mineral aggregate and aggregate resources, I'd like to comment specifically on Schedule 10, which deals with mineral aggregates, and the ambiguity that I see in some of the wording as a result of having been present at the OMB hearing on the rezoning of 1937 Ramey Road. And when it refers to incidental uses, during the hearing we heard numerous discussions, delays because of definitions, and incidental is probably defined differently by every one of the councillors. If I were to ask them to write down what their definition of incidental would be, I would get 8 different definitions. The same with associated, affiliated, what is compatible, compatible to what, and if we are going to allow vagueness, then it's open to interpretation, and I would suggest that those words either be defined or that maybe a very generic description be that the wording is common English usage, usage as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, uses as defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, but take the ambiguity away and make it specific so that there is no ambiguity, no chance for discussion as to what was really intended, because what is intended is what is actually written in the official plan. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Halinga. And Jack, your address?
770 Highway 3 East.
Okay, Jack Halinga. Mr. Aquilina, did you want to respond to some of those comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was trying to follow if there was an actual question in there or just more general comments from Mr. Halinga. Again, reference to the Ontario Municipal Board hearing, which is not before this council this evening. The text changes to add definitions. That's something that we can address at a later time, but it's not subject to tonight's application, proposed hearing. I think the language in the official plan is sufficient, and that was brought forward at the Ontario Municipal Board hearing by myself.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. And Mr. Halinga, thank you. Appreciate your time this evening. Members of the gallery, are there any further oral presentations, comments, questions? With none, Mr. Aquilina, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to state the following. And we do have a sign-in sheet at the back of the room if any member of the gallery would like to actually receive notice of the passage of the proposed amendment, if council chooses to do so. We will have a recommendation report for council's consideration at an up-and-coming meeting relatively soon. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed City of Port Colborne official plan amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that make such a request to the clerk will be given such notice upon the adoption of the proposed bylaw. Mr. Mayor, this does conclude the statutory meeting under the Planning Act, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Well done. Members of council, motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Councillor Doucette. Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to the second public meeting, which is a public meeting report for a zoning bylaw amendment, file number D140814, subject west side of Mellanby Avenue. Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This meeting is being held pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. It is considered a proposed amendment to allow for a new operations center for the City of Port Colborne. The location of this property is highlighted by the red dot. It is known as the Island. It's north of the Fire Emergency Services Building on the west side of Mellanby Avenue and Kalali Street West. The next slide there gives you an indication of the actual outline of the proposed amendment. The procedure this evening, Mr. Mayor, is to follow the same as we just did for the proposed official plan amendment, is that I will give a report regarding the proposed amendment. We'll then allow council or yourself, Mr. Mayor, to ask any questions to myself. We'll then open the floor up to any member of the public if they wish to address council. I will give an announcement respecting a written notice of passage, and I'll give an explanation of future meetings in regards to this application. As indicated, the lands are west of Mellenby Avenue. It's a very long legal description, so I won't go into that detail. It's a good 3 sentences long, very long, given the historic area and the plans that were approved in place back in the day. Council will recall that the zoning of the property was approved previously to facilitate a residential subdivision. Those lands were changed and currently are R3-363 holding, third density residential, and RT 364H residential townhouse special. We're changing the lands in question back to public and park. That's what they were previously prior to the residential subdivision application and the proposed development of that. Notice of tonight's meeting was given in accordance with Section 34(12) and 13 of the Planning Act and Section 3 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. 2 signs were posted on this property, and all notices were sent to 120 meters of the property to the adjacent property owners. Notice was also placed on the city's website on July 21st, and the signs were posted on the property on July 21st as well. The following comments that we received are as follows. There were no comments from any member of the public. The city's building division had no objections to the proposed amendment, and they mentioned if there's any building code issues to be dealt with, they will deal with that at the time of site plan control and building permit issuance. Fire and Emergency Services indicated they have no objection to the proposed rezoning, and any issues regarding fire safety will be addressed at the time of building permit application. The only other comment we received was from the region of Niagara, and they indicate that the construction will require a 4th leg of Mellenby Avenue and Kalali Street West intersection. And to inform council, city staff has worked with the region of Niagara, so none of these are any of a surprise to city staff, but I would like to highlight the following. They mentioned approval of any secondary access onto Kalali Street is dependent upon the proximity to the existing intersection and southerly curve sight lines, etc. They would like to review the engineering drainage grading plan of the proposed development, any elevations, and any stormwater management issues that may be pertaining to this property. They indicate that there is a Niagara Trail system to the east that should be looked into at the time of this development and have a review of that as well. They made the comment that they are aware that city staff is aware of any potential noise impact to the lands to the north, and that the city will undertake a noise assessment of that development onto that residential community. They indicate from a regional and provincial planning perspective, there are no concerns with this development, and they do mention that all of these comments are going to be entertained and looked into at the time of site plan review. Mr. Mayor, that does conclude the planning report and the information of this proposed amendment, and I will allow any member of council or yourself with any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Aquilina, have you had any comment from the residents at all?
Mr. Aquilina.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no.
Councillor. Further questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. I remember when we were talking about this, I mean, we were often saying, no, it isn't going to happen. If it does, for any reason, go through, we are going to make every effort possible to keep all the noisy area as far away from the residential properties as possible. I believe that's what we discussed, but At least that's what was discussed by the consultant.
Mr. Aquilina?
Through Mr. Mayor, my indication and knowledge from being at this council before you was that any indication of any impacts would be addressed and the facility would be sited in a way to appease as much as possible any concerns that the neighbors to the north would have, whether it be berming, screening of that nature, and to shift the development further to the south to push itself away from the residential area.
Further questions or comments, members of council? If we can have no comments from the public, you're going to have your opportunity to come on up here, guys, in a second. Okay, so no yelling from the gallery, please. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Members of council, any further comments or questions? With that, Mr. Aquilina?
Sure, I would like to read this before we open the floor up to any member of the public. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the city before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party of the hearing of an appeal before the OMB unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. With that, members of the gallery, if you want to come on up, if you have any comments or questions, just simply state your name and your address, and the floor is all yours. Ma'am, if you want to come on up. No, just come on up here. Mr. Aquilina, I think we're going to have a few delegations, so if you can just take a seat at the front here, and that way if there's any questions, you can answer them accordingly. Thank you, Dan. Ma'am, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and public. We have communicated before. I was unable to go to the last meeting, as was my neighbor. I don't know, I can't speak for the others. But we do have some concerns. One was, noise. Another concern I had was lighting. I know that there are things they can do for lighting if there's excess that perhaps the berms can't help. For example, like Oscom Steel has done for the neighbors there. They put some special things they had to order from California or whatever that brought the light down more, so you didn't have this light that you're looking at from your upstairs window. Now, my daughter had to deal with that, so I know that for a fact they can do something like that. Okay, were you going to say something? Oh,
Mr. Aquilina,
okay. I thought you were going. I had a few questions.
That's
Shall
fine.
I continue or?
What he'll do is he'll address your concerns or your questions one by one.
Okay.
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, through the site plan process and the building permit process, no directional lighting is to shine on the neighbors. It's supposed to be going down.
Okay.
And we will ensure that happens. There are ways to do that on the design of the lighting.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Aquilina.
How about property values? That was another one. Will that be affecting us?
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, I am not an appraiser, so I can't give you generalization of comments of how that's going to impact the neighbors. I can't answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina.
Okay. In the plan, there was a few things that I noticed. With the zoning change, what can happen to that part that's called the exterior landscape? And I don't mean necessarily what they're going to do with it now, but what can happen with that area?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through Mr. Mayor, to the actual presenter, are you referring to the lands in between the building and Melody Avenue, or to the lands to the north?
To the north? To the north? I sort of circled this area here. So this is the fire hall, the other
Yes.
end, yeah,
Okay.
the north end.
My understanding, engineering and operations will properly site the facility and take into consideration all the impacts from the neighbors and to address the area with berming and landscaping and screening devices.
Yes, I'm aware that they're going to have the berming, this, like south of that area, but this is also part of that property land outside of it.
Just, if I may, Dan, there may be some clarification needed
Oh,
for
here
the
we are.
property that is not included in the envelope of where the op center may be going to. There are properties to the north that the city may not consider utilizing for the operations center. So if we can get some comment on that with respect to where the planning department sees us going with respect to those lands that won't be within the envelope. And that would essentially be between the old Marsh building, in behind and around, as well as where Grants is presently, and in behind. And of course, the envelope, as per the schedule, abuts that property, or those properties that may be in excess or surplus to what we may be using it for with respect to the house building and the envelope that's going to be containing
Certainly, Mr. Mayor.
the operations center.
Presently, right now, it is zoned for residential development. If council wants to actually identify and distinguish what lands are to be kept for the operations center, council then, through this process, might want to take a look at what lands you want to have to the north be as, because what we're proposing is public and park. So they're very limited uses with public and park. You need to be a public agency to use those lands. If council has an appetite for any other type of use to the north, then we could bring those forward as part of this zoning change this evening. We would need some clarification as to what the actual facility needs with respect to how much land to properly zone this property as is.
Okay. That also leads to the question of what they have Future Drive that leads up to and actually goes on to that area that I was explaining. I can't reach. I can point on this or not?
Actually, you can actually use the mouse there. That's right. Yeah, you
Hey, okay. So here's the Future Drive. I can't do this smoothly, but you get the picture. And this was the area that I was concerned about. I live over here, and like this is a lot of the residential over that, right? Well, that'll directly affect us more so, I think.
Mr. Aquilina?
So,
Mr. Mayor, I wasn't part of the actual process to develop the site. I know engineering and operations were. This plan before us this evening is conceptual in nature. So I'm not, it's not proper for me to actually make comment as to what the city intends to do with the site. I'm here this evening just to propose
Deal with
the
the planning amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Hanson, any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Aquilini is quite correct. This plan is very conceptual. What we look at for a development like this is to have a secondary access, not for the use of the trucks and the vehicles coming in, but strictly as an emergency access. For whatever reason, there was an accident at the signal intersection going in, we would have a secondary access for emergency purposes. The intent here is to have all the traffic channeled in from Mellenby Avenue through the signalized intersection to the site and strictly have this as an emergency access. Okay. And it can be controlled that way during
so
the
likely it
site
would be
Thank you, Mr.
paved,
Hanson.
probably. Likely it would be paved then as that's a future plan, not.
Mr. Mayor, that
Mr.
would be
Hanson.
built as part of the site. It would be paved. It would be an extension of Port Colborne Drive that's there now and strictly be used as a driveway with controlled access into the site.
Okay. So therefore, it wouldn't, right now you have the people that use the skateboard park, and they tend to be parking near that area. Not only that, them crossing there with more going on in that area seems a bit, worrisome too. Would we try to keep the skateboard families from parking in that area, or does that not affect it at all?
Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Mayor, that parking on the west side of Mellenby Avenue is not part of the skateboard park. It's unofficial.
No.
It's vacant land that's being used that way. With the development, with the rezoning and the development of the operations center, that sort of usage would disappear as a vacant land and it would be developed completely. There'd be no parking.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Hanson.
I had only one more question.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had asked this before in a way that I'm not sure I'm going to be asking it any clearer, but I didn't get an answer to satisfy me, or I didn't understand the answer perhaps. Have the Cultural, Tourism, and Aboriginal Rights Committee or organization, whatever, it's a ministry branch, have they been communicated with and responded back from?
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, as far as this zoning application this evening, no, they were not. I'm not sure if anything was as part of the consultation is the Public Information Center. I can't comment on that, but as part of the zoning application, there's no requirement for us to circulate to the Ministry of Culture, I believe you're referring to.
Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Mayor, since this site is new for the operations center, we haven't got to that stage yet. As part of the development process, we can certainly distribute to all the affected agencies. Once this is a site that's designated and the Technical Advisory Committee again gets working on this site, if the site is rezoned, and then we'd go through all the agency process, and certainly that would be one of them.
Okay.
Just a question on that before you sit down. With respect to an archaeological as part of the environmental assessment, would that be part of the due diligence to actually prep the property up for building the op center on?
Normally, Mr. Mayor, it is. We did it for the Valet Center and routine projects. It depends on the site. If there's been a prior usage to the site, it's not usually required because the site has already been disturbed.
Sure.
For newer land like this, it may be required. So we'd leave that to the ministry to advise us.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Okay. I think that...
Mr. Aquilina, you had further comment?
Just one last comment. The region of Niagara has all the affected areas that have archaeological concerns, and even through the proposed development prior to, that was never addressed as a need to have that in place. The comments that we got from the region with this application, again, there was no indication that that report, the phase 1 or phase 2 archaeological assessment, should be submitted or prepared.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Ma'am?
Okay, in response to that, I'm not sure that, like a lot of the land there had been shifted, shall I say?
Disturbed.
Disturbed, yeah. But I think they're, in that area that I was last talking about, that exterior landscape one, in here, I don't believe all that was, so I thought that might be of some concern in the future. And I know just on our own property, we found some archaeological artifacts there. But I guess that's all I have to say, except that I know that we don't own the property. It's not ours. I like to see it sort of stay where it is, and I think that's naive to think that it would. But we're going to miss what we have back there. My husband's done some trails for walking on. We take the grandkids, and it's like a central park, and I think it's a nice feature of Port Colborne. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And if I could just have your name and your address?
Linda Telving, 29 Canal Bank Road.
Great. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. I know you're chomping at the bit, so come on up. And I also know you're a rookie to the council chamber. Welcome. If we can just have your name and address.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Peter Sloccarelli on 146 Mellenby Avenue.
Great. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. This is almost the same as what she's saying. Right. I wrote down just a fast summary. I'm against the parking for the city, the truck parking area on the island and near the fire hall. It will decrease the value of my house and property and safety of children and maybe some pets too, like cats or whatever, that roam around there. And most of all, it will create double traffic, which I have now already, including the 2 bridges and the skateboard park during the night hours. And also will create some noise and exhaust pollution. You know, I lived on an island all my life, now I'm going to add, because the bridges create more traffic.
Okay.
You know,
Great.
so.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members of the gallery, are there any further comments or questions? With none, Mr. Aquilina.
Mr. Mayor, there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room if any member of the public would like to receive written notice of the proposed passage or the passage of this proposed amendment, and we will forward you the actual notice in the mail. I would like to read the following for the record. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons in public bodies that give a clerk a written notice of the Give a clerk a written request of the notice of passage of the bylaw will be given such notice. Mr. Mayor, this does conclude the public hearing under the Planning Act. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilino. Well done. Members of council, with no further questions or comments, I will ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Bodner, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to our committee of the whole portion of this evening's agenda, members of council. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, none this evening.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? What are you smiling at? She is. Thank you, B. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you, members. Are there any disclosures of interest? Disclosures of interest with none, as noted by the clerk. Thank you. Members of council, any items requiring separate discussion this evening? Come on, Ron, get that hand up. Councillor Bodnar.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a decision on item 8 with the chicken situation?
I would recommend that we do lift that.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Seeing that I made the front page of the Tribune this past, was it today? Any further items, members, for separate discussion? With none, Madam Clerk, any items that you want lifted? Members of staff, we're okay? You're good? Mr. CAO, you're fine?
Oh, I'm perfect.
Well, I won't go there. Recorded vote? I'm just taking a quick look here just to make sure we don't let anything slip through the cracks. With none, okay, members of council, I will ask for a motion to accept the remainder of the items, please. Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. I do notice that the delegation that we were waiting for is here. Mrs. Elizabeth Madronich. Elizabeth, welcome. You are here, you are up to speak about the Roselawn Centre for the Arts, the rates and fees. As members of council do recognize, it is in our agenda, page 43. We're all waiting for you, Elizabeth. It's all right. I'm just teasing you. You just want to press the button there, and you're live. Once again, welcome, and the floor is yours. You're good.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. So shall I read the letter to begin with? I think everybody has a copy of this letter, but I'll go ahead and read it and go through a few points. Okay. So once again, I'm Elizabeth Madronich, or Pudsey, as everyone else knows me as, and I've taken over the author series for William Thomas, and it was a little bit of a last-minute thing because nobody else was stepping up to the plate, so the volunteers and I got together and had a meeting, and they all decided that I should do this, and so I am. So I'm not William Thomas. I don't have the charm and charisma and sense of humor and all that kind of thing, but I do know what I'm doing. I've worked on the series for probably almost 15 years now, so I know the ins and outs. I've done every volunteer position on this planet pretty much in the arts community, so I know quite a bit about that as well. So I will go ahead and read the letter. So ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I, with the support of the volunteers and several sponsors, am continuing to run the Canadian Author Series as its previous host of 20 years, William Thomas, has stepped down. This 265-member series, second in attendance only to Showboat, has been the premier perennial of Roselawn and the main cultural draw of our town for more than 20 years. The Author Series is well known and respected within the literary community. It has put Port Colborne on the literary and cultural map with its high-caliber celebrity authors, Peter Mansbridge, David Suzuki, Rex Murphy, Margaret Atwood, Pierre Burton, Farley Mowat, Dan Hill, Mordecai Richler, Conrad Black, Mary Walsh, Jean Gomeshi, Margaret Trudeau, and so, have all graced the Roselawn stage over the years. Our series contributes a great deal to our community economically and culturally. It has donated more than $35,000 to local charities over the years and donated hundreds of books for charity auctions. This series put 6,000 books into the hands of readers in a town too small to support a bookstore. Subscribers patronize local bars and restaurants prior to the reading and after. The author, along with the host and his sponsors, are treated to dinner at all our local restaurants. The author and publicist stay at a local bed and breakfast. Niagara wines, spirits, and local food are purchased and presented at our 7 o'clock tastings, which precede the readings. The author takes home a Taste of Niagara gift basket containing local wines, books, preserves, food, and gifts. Recently, I met with Harry Hakeem to discuss our continued business with Roselawn. I was quite concerned at the increase in rental fees of the Roselawn for our event. It is, and actually there's one change to be made here. I have, it is 50% higher than last year, but with my two wonderful bookkeepers, we discovered it was actually 75% higher than what William was paying. The previous fees, whomever implemented them, did factor into the cost of our affordable ticket price. Just because the reins have changed hands does not mean that we are a different entity. After great deliberation, our committee made the decision to reduce our subscription price this season by $15. We became aware that the cost was becoming a barrier for many subscribers. We have done our research the hard way. Last year, we raised the ticket price by a few dollars a reading, and we lost 30% of our existing membership along with our waiting list. So this is not a question of our not selling the subscribers on the value of the ticket price, nor is this an issue of weak marketing strategy. It's about a ceiling price that people in our town are willing to pay for a live literary entertainment. Although we have some members who come from Dunnville, Welland, Fort Erie, St. Catharines, and other places, most of our members are local taxpayers. Port Colborne is not a wealthy city, and the Niagara region has the highest unemployment in Ontario. So comparing Roselawn's rent to similar venues in other regions is not terribly helpful in today's economic climate. The increase in cost of the Roselawn is more than our series can bear. I respectfully request that Council grants the Canadian Author Series an extension of the deal made with William Thomas for the next 3 years. At the end of this time, I will provide Council with financial reports that will indicate our success or failure, and it can be determined at that time if there is merit in keeping a special author series rate. During this critical time, our series needs to build a solid reputation, a track record in the absence of the award-winning humor writer William Thomas, fill the Roselawn Theatre by keeping subscription prices low, provide a strong lineup of authors, and build a waiting list. Although Roselawn is the perfect home for the Canadian Author Series, if the rental rate is as prescribed by bylaw, our series may have to seek an alternative venue.
Thank you, Pussy. Well done. Members of Council, questions or comments? I have Councillor Bodner and Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Putsy, for your presentation and your concern for this author series. You know, I know we've worked hard to create events at Roselawn. Mr. Hakeem has helped to expand the number of events going on there, along with a lot of volunteers. And I think we've got a good thing going. I think we're going in the right direction. And certainly we would never want, I personally would never want to lose the author series out of Roselawn. So I think that there needs to be some consideration, and I don't know, I'll wait to hear from Mr. Hakeem as to the thought process on the rent raise. But you know, the notoriety this brings to the city and the great opportunity to get up close with these fabulous authors, it's really great. It's a wonderful experience, and there just needs to be a way we can work this out, and I know we can work it out. So I'll wait and hear from some other thoughts, but I may want to say more on this, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bodner.
Thank you.
Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Madronich, thank you so much for the work you do, and please know that we do truly value that series.
Thank you.
Having said that, we can't always ask the taxpayer to bear all these costs. So I'd like to come to a happy medium here, and it may help to have some history, such as how many increases have you seen over the life of the series, and what kind of increases were they? 75% is a lot to bear, but possibly we can work to get that down, but we need to have a good understanding of what has happened in the past.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Madronich.
The problem is that I was not privy to all of the financial, you know, that even our bookkeeper now really can't tell us exactly everything that went on with William Thomas. So I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you some things. I can tell you that part of our problem is that, and I hope I'm helping to answer your question, that first of all, things have changed quite a bit in the series. I don't know whether, whether there's been cost increases to William or not as far as the Roselawn is concerned, but I do know that ticket prices, or book sales have completely dwindled, and I think there was probably a small window of opportunity to make some money there. But with Kindle and Costco and all the rest of it, that has gone way, way down. So there's absolutely, book sales are awash. There's nothing to be made there. And then, of course, this year, we've now lowered the ticket price. And we're doing that for the community because we do not want this to become something that only wealthy people can afford. We want this to be affordable for everybody. And so that's sort of our main objective with that. I know that a lot of people think we could be charging a lot more, and maybe we could, maybe we couldn't, but there are just too many people that we can just sense that there's a problem with that. So that was a difficult decision for us to make, to actually lower the price, especially when we haven't gone through a full year yet. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what all of our costs are. So we're really in a difficult position because the other thing is the tastings, which we're now going to have to pay for, because I did the volunteer job of going around to every winery across the peninsula and getting wine and so on. I won't talk too much about that, but we can't keep doing that. Everybody is tight right now. Everybody's, got to pull up the reins, so we can't keep expecting to do that. So all of our costs, I mean, not even including Roselawn, have gone up, and there's really nothing that we can do about that. So I am very nervous to have taken this on this year because I have absolutely no idea where it's going to go, what's going to happen, whether we're going to succeed or fail. I mean, I'm hoping it's going to go well, and I'm hoping everyone will come back and everything will continue as it always has. But it's a considerable risk. So those are really the costs that I can tell you about that I know have increased for sure. So already we're operating at a loss from whatever William was doing. So, and I do believe that there should be a small margin of opportunity to make a modest salary for me, because there's no way I will do this next year unless I can make something from this. But I know for sure this will not be a cash cow. It's not going to be something where there's going to be all kinds of profit and lots of money being made. It just won't. It's just, that's not possible. So.
Thank you, Ms. Madronich. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Madronich. Possibly Harry could speak to this?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hakeem.
Through your worship to Councillor Desmarais. As far as historically, and with respect to previous administration, we didn't really have a formalized agreement with William Thomas's outfit. There was a grandfathering, and I think at the time, several months ago, we discussed the fees and rates at Roselawn. We've held the line on those fees and rates, certainly for the 2 years I've been here now, and I think prior to that. So we've held the line. What we've done with respect to what Putzi has brought forward is actually bring it back in line with our current fees and rates that council has approved. So I'm working with those guidelines and applying those parameters. There is an outside opportunity. If they are a registered not-for-profit, there is a reduction rate that is approved by council that we can apply. But that's something that we had discussed, so I don't know what direction they've taken to take advantage of that opportunity as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Considering all of this and considering what the series brings to Port Colborne, I would like to have us take a look at maybe meeting halfway, 37.5% increase.
Mr. Hakeem?
Through your worship to Councillor Desmarais, I think rather than committing that way, I'd rather sit down with Putzi and come up with a reasonable factor that really works within the boundaries that I set by council, for one. I'm not privy to some of the increases that are being quoted. I'd have to go back and really look at that increase. I'm not going to, commit to anything at this point in time. I don't think it would be premature on my part, and certainly unwise. So I think it's something that we can review. It's something that certainly we can discuss further and perhaps come to an arrangement. But we'd have to look at all the possibilities as far as what they're doing, and they're taking it somewhat in a different direction. We've got to be careful with that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem.
Can I ask what he means by that?
Pussy, go ahead.
Sorry, Harry, can you tell me what you mean by taking in a different direction?
Mr. Hakeem?
Well, you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, the series is going to be serving alcohol, and you're going to be charged for that, or you're being charged for that. So we have to look at that and see how the extension of our license, perhaps, or the fact that you may have to get a special occasion permit over and above.
We already have everything we need, and we've been doing this for years.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem.
Nothing's going to change except the fact that William's going and our costs have gone up in every other respect other than not including.
Okay, thank you, Pussy. Further questions, comments? Councillor Demer, you're done?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think Harry's come upon the best ideas to sit down and talk it out and see what can be done to work it out.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Desmarais in that I believe that Harry and Putsy have to get together and come out with something. But the other concern I have is there a timeline where this has to happen? And if there's a timeline, then should we, as a council, request that this report come back from Harry, once having done that, within that timeline? And Putsy, maybe you can give us the answer to that, or Harry can give us the answer to that. What timeline are we looking at here?
We need to find out, we need to resolve this immediately, and I know I apologize because I did meet Harry a number of months ago, but the summers are my absolute worst time teaching camps and up north and teaching up there. And anyway, so it's probably my fault, and I apologize for that, Harry. But we are really in a crunch right now because somehow we still have to sell those tickets. So I've got to get it into the press and figure out how to get those tickets sold. And I would actually prefer if something could be resolved with all of you somehow as quickly as possible. Harry and I did meet, and I feel, you know, with all due respect, I feel that we weren't getting anywhere as far as I mean, all I could really do at that point was to go and look for another venue, which I did, and I have found one that is, I mean, I can't really say, but I'm being honest when I tell you that it's a fraction of the price, and it's a very acceptable location. Roselawn obviously is the perfect place, and it would absolutely break my heart to go somewhere else. But it's not going to work at this fee. So I'm really just saying that it's not going to work at the fee if the bylaw is in place. So I think that it would probably require some change or allowance. I don't know. I'm not a politician.
Thank you, Pussy. Councillor Doucette, you're fine? I'm fine. Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an important issue that we need to work out. I would volunteer myself and ask that Councillor Damaris maybe would help and sit down with Harry, us and Putsy to see if there's some way to, you know, to bring this forward. And I don't quite know how to do that because we wouldn't be able to make a decision, but we would need something that, some guidelines or something. I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. The other thing I would throw out is that, is there a possibility that we could give this new group a year with a very modest increase to see if we can then get the financials like Putsy had offered and really have a track record of where we're going and how this may unfold. You know, I'm just throwing ideas out there. I don't know. I would make that a recommendation if council thinks that that's the way to go. So I'll just put that out there for discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question of the speaker. When I'm reading this again, you reduced your subscription price this year by $15.
Right.
And when you tried to make an increase, I guess, was that the year before, by $2, or it says a few dollars, so I'm thinking $2 or $3.
Sorry, I should have compared apples and apples.
Right.
We put the ticket price up a few dollars per reading, but then you multiply that by 7 because it's a concert. So we put it up by, I think it was $3 a reading, so 3 times.
So you just kind of gave them their.
Yeah, so I
changed it back.
basically
So you
did
held the line on the price. Is that what you
Well, I
did?
went back on the price because it was already up here and we moved it down to here where it was, whatever, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or a bit
I'm
lower.
just saying that's, to me, you know, I hear great things about it from people who attend it. And for me, who had just held the line on the price, I'm sure people who have paid it are going to come back and pay that same price if I knew I was going someplace and it was going to be $15 for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, I'd be happy with that. So I guess I have a concern that the price has been reduced. All the while, I believe that Mr. Hakeem, we want to keep that Arthur series at Roselawn, and I believe that's the best thing to do. But I think your patrons who enjoy this series should be willing to make that compromise or that decision too. Thanks.
Sorry, you mean?
I just think that you gave them a $15, that was over the whole season, $15.
Right.
And then you, that was over the whole season,
Right.
$15, not $15, that was
Not-
for the season, right?
yes.
And then when you raised it, it says, last year we raised the ticket price by a few dollars.
That's not us, that was the
Okay, folks,
prior year.
That's
If we
okay,
can-
that's all, I just want to
Counselor,
get clarity,
If we can
But-
speak to the chair here,
Yeah,
I
sorry.
would appreciate that.
okay?
Okay,
I just
so
want clarity
we can't have a
about-
side conversation
about
happening
that.
here, so
Okay.
if we can have you speak to the
Yeah.
chair.
I just
And
want
Putsy, if
clarity
you-
on that, Your
Counselor
Worship,
Kenny,
that's all.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Putsy, if you can speak to the chair as well, that way we don't have a
Okay.
conversation going on between the two counselors, that would be great, or counselor and yourself, that would be great. Counselor Kenny?
That's all I wanted, Your Worship, I wanted clarity on the ticket price, that's all.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Counselor Kenny. Putsy, any comment?
No, I guess not on the ticket price. I just wanted to understand what
Fair enough.
Ms. Kenny was saying. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Members of council, any further comments or questions? Counselor Bodnar, go ahead.
Well, we need to move this ahead and get it resolved, there's no doubt about it. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Putsy, what are we looking at a reasonable time frame? Next council meeting or sooner?
Putsy?
Sooner, please.
Sooner.
I think, and that's a great question, Counselor Bodnar. What is the timeline? What timeframe do you have here?
Well, I was hoping that something could be resolved. I don't know how this all works,
Tonight?
but I
Say it.
that's the truth. I was hoping it would be resolved tonight, but I understand the complexity of the issue, so as soon as possible.
Counselor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Putsy, have you applied to become a nonprofit organization, or is that even on your radar, or?
That's a great question. I've looked into it. I talked to other people about it, and we wanted to get through a year just to see whether that's going to be of benefit to us. I'm a little concerned about giving up control to somebody else, to be perfectly honest. And I feel that once you start opening it up for a lot of different people to start putting in a lot of different ideas, that I've already gone through all this. I know what works and what doesn't work, and just anything. When you've been working at a job for a very long time, you kind of know where you're at. That concerns me a little bit, but that's not out of the question at all. That's definitely a consideration. And I did want to mention too, is that the previous rate that William was paying is actually higher than the nonprofit rate. So actually Roselawn would profit more by us doing it just the way it is right now. Just so you know, if a matter of Roselawn and profit and taxpayers and that kind of thing is what the issue is, then it's definitely more money. But that's definitely not out of the question. I think it's probably going to be a good solution. So.
Counselor?
Okay, so I think probably at some point you should consider the not-for-profit, just because I don't get the giving up any control or anything. I know different groups have done that, but anyways, that'll be up to you guys to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if that was the case, then certainly that rate would apply, and I'm a little concerned when you say it would be actually less than what William was paying before, and I'd have to check that with Mr. Hakeem. I don't know whether that's factual or not.
I have it right here, if I could help you with that.
Okay.
I think William was paying $800 and then I think around $800. And how it works with, so he was paying $800 our new total would be 1449, so that's the 75% increase. And so half of that, maybe I'm thinking with, oh, you know what, maybe it's about the same. Or is it? No, you know what, I need my bookkeepers here to know for sure, but it's either the same. I had calculated that it was more, that we would actually be providing for the taxpayers. But we can, if we have our talk, we can go over all the figures very carefully and make sure that that's the case.
Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, there seems to be a little bit of confusion as to who's paying what and what the rate would be and everything. I don't see a way to do this right tonight. I don't know that, I'm looking at councilors and I'm not sure that everybody is prepared to make a decision on something that we don't have hard and fast numbers on. I really think we need to sit down and do this and do it as quick as possible. I certainly would make myself available. I think Councillor Desmarais would make herself available. Mr. Hakeem, you know, I'm sure would make himself available if we could do a meeting very quickly, but I can't see a decision coming forward till the next council meeting. If that puts you in a bind, I'm sorry, but I don't think anybody wants to make a decision here tonight on something we don't really have all the facts to. So I propose us getting together, trying to hash this out, bring it back to the next council meeting. Certainly we can let all the councilors know what we find out early enough so they can have a good thought process and bring it back to the next council meeting that is in 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And does that put you right out of the, I don't know what to say, but it's not going to be easy tonight, I don't think, to get a decision, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Medrano?
There were a couple of points that I just wanted to add as well. And if this makes it any easier for anybody, first of all, that our season is the shoulder season as well. So it's also a Thursday night as opposed to a Saturday. I guess I'm sort of looking at, the use of that space compared to, you bring in a wedding or something on a Friday, on a Saturday, and they're there all day. The other thing is, when you really think about it, we're actually only in the facility for a few hours during the late afternoon. We're not there for a whole evening, a big long thing. We're about an hour in the theater, an hour doing the tasting, and then, sort of overlap in between. So we're at about 28 to 30 hours total in the facility on a Thursday night on the shoulder season. And we do bring a lot to the community, a lot. We've put so much back into the community. So, if that means anything. And the other thing is that if you want to put it in perspective, I do have the figure here per night. Let me just see if I have per year. Yeah, it works out to be about $10,000 for 30 hours of time in there at the most, 28 to 30 hours. So it's fairly steep for what we're doing in there, and I don't know how that works, whether if people have a wedding and they're all day, do they get charged the same amount, whatever, but that's all in the bylaw, I'm sure. So I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Thank you, Putzi. Actually, it is. Members of council, any further questions or comments? If I may, I'd like to jump into this discussion myself, because when you talk about some of the things that you're doing, you're bang on, Putzi, and I think we all recognize that with respect to the overall value that you add to the economy, especially the retail and, of course, commercial economy, restaurants, and people coming into the community. I know as a member of the Scotiabank Centre Board of Directors, one of the things that we do consider when we're setting our rates for those folks that come into the actual convention center in Niagara Falls is how many heads go in beds, how much economic impact is going to be accrued over the period of time that these folks are into the city, region as well. And of course with that, a more suitable scale of pricing is established because of that economy that it's creating. And the reason why I'm saying that is for Harry, for you to go back while you're discussing this with Putzi and Councillor Bodner and Desmarais, and take that into consideration with respect to the economy it's going to create for the community, because let's face it, it does do that. And I think there's something has to be said about that, especially with respect to setting those rates in comparison to others that may be using the facility that may not in fact have an economic impact as extravagant as you folks may have. With that as well, I also want to take it a step further, Harry, with respect to your discussion, not just talking about the rates and talking about the obvious with respect to the economic impact, but also the added value with less cost impact. What I mean by that is that there may be an opportunity that we may be able to charge a bit more to get the taxpayer a lot more back with respect to what they're otherwise subsidizing. However, there might be some less cost added value items that we can package into the facility for the use by the author series, and therefore ultimately by the customer that would then frequent the author series. Things like the alcohol food side and things of that nature. So basically added value services for the customer, but yet less cost for the corporation, and therefore some of those costs can be recouped through the fee, but you're getting more for it is the bottom line, and that's what I'm getting at. And therefore you can actually add to your ticket sales by the added services that you're actually giving to the customer versus just the author series in itself of what happens in that theater, what happens in the overall center with respect to the experience they may have. As attached to that is we may want to also knock on the doors of some of the other providers of tourism in Niagara. And what I mean by that is talking with NFT, Niagara Falls Tourism, speaking with some of the hotels down in the more popular areas, whether they be in Niagara Falls or St. Catharines or even Jordan and some Niagara Lake and other destinations, because they have bus tours coming down to Niagara on a regular basis. These bus tours sometimes stay more than one night. If in fact we have an opportunity where we can divert some of those or add to their tour to not only the place that they're destined for, but to actually have an extra stop coming here to your author series, that may be something to investigate as well. So therefore, again, it goes to that added value. And of course, with the more, well, not so much heads in beds, but possibly people in restaurants and people frequenting the city more, again, that has some value attached to it too. And then of course, that can attach itself to a more appropriate rate that council can give consideration to. And just a message to council, if that all comes back to council at the next meeting, I think full consideration should be given because of those economies that we may be realized versus or in comparison to other tenants that may be in fact going into the Roselawn Center that may not attach themselves to those economies. So I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. It's still a subsidy. A subsidy is a subsidy is a subsidy, but I think there has to be some consideration given to those economies that are realized. Let's face it, more economies are realized, you might be losing, or the taxpayer might be losing on subsidizing Roselawn Center for the author series, but they'll be making on the gain, they'll be making on assessment from the retail commercial sector that you otherwise might not recognize over time if they're not actually supported by events such as this. And the perfect example is go down Clarence Street on Thursday night. Okay? Fortunately, it's not cost us much, but look at the economy that's creating. If you can get the same amount of people coming down from Roselawn to frequent those same businesses on a different night, then of course, again, there's something to be said about that. So if that can be part of the discussion, and I'll throw, Harry, between now and tonight, I'll probably throw 10 more at you. So if we can have those discussed and then come back to council with all that package, that would be wonderful, and then council can make a decision accordingly. Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we have someone that wants to stay there. We have a council that I believe wants them to stay there. Mr. Hakeem, I know is a reasonable person. He has certain guidelines from council, but look, I know we can work this out, and you know, we just can't work it out tonight. So I know that that puts you maybe in a bind, but I can say that we'll get a meeting together as soon as we can, and I'm pretty sure we can work it out. And whether we poll council to see whether they would, you know, have a really good feeling about what we've been able to work out, that may give you some, you know, consideration. Nothing's final till it's voted on here, but you know, just a thought process. But I don't see the votes happening tonight to make this happen. So but I think we can make it happen.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments from members of council? Putzi, anything you want to add?
I guess not. I just, I'm just concerned because I know I'm supposed to meet with the reporter tomorrow night and the following day, and I'm supposed to be doing all this publicity, and I guess I just, I want to be saying that, you know, that it's going to be at Roselawn, and I guess I'll just have to leave that blank for now, I suppose, just leave it out. So I'm, you know, I almost wish I could just say something to them and just say yes and just kind of go, it's going to be okay. But again, I understand if people aren't going to, if we can't do it tonight, we can't do it tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Putzi, and thank you for your time this evening. Harry, time frame with respect to a meeting? As soon as possible. It can happen this week within the next couple of days. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just saying I'm available any day but Friday.
Let's get it ASAP, guys. And if I have to call a special meeting of council, I will. So that way we can at least hopefully soften the timelines a bit instead of waiting for the next council meeting.
Okay.
If there is a solution, Harry, that you guys can come up with and a package that you guys can prepare to council sooner rather than later, I can simply call a special meeting of council. We can rally back into this chamber with yourself and others and hopefully solidify and ratify it and move forward.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thanks, Putzi. Thank you for your time. Members of council, thank you. And Harry, thank you as well. We're now going to move on to regional council items. Regional Councillor Barrick has sent his regrets this evening. Are there any regional councillor items, members of council, that I can tend to for you? With none, we'll move on to councillors' items. Members of council, any new business or councillors' items? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hanson, I guess I had asked for a report on the dead trees that are happening around the city. I just wonder whether you can give an idea when that's happening. I have a request this weekend for someone that wants city staff to visit a property that they feel the tree is in some danger of coming down on the cars that are parked. And it's not their tree, it's a neighbor's tree. But so anyways, I just wonder when that's coming. And also, how are we going to deal with our own trees? As you drive along some of our streets, I'm just thinking Empire Road because I go down there quite often. There's a lot of dead ash trees in that tree line, whether they're ours or not. They're just, you know, sticking out towards the road. It's just a matter of time before they come down. Are we going to wait for them to come down, or are we going to be proactive?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That report is in the works. We haven't prepared it as yet. There's been a forestry report done through the CAO's office, and he's actually looked at harvesting of trees within the city's woodlots and so on. So from a slightly different angle than your question would be the management of the woodlots that are owned by the city. From the perspective of the ash trees on the roadways and on city property, that's being managed with the resources that are available to us now. With the budgeting that's available, we're going along. We're cutting down literally hundreds of trees this year, as you know. Every tree can't be taken down at the same time. Every municipality in Ontario and probably North America are dealing with this particular ash, emerald ash borer issue right now. Some municipalities, and one of the other councillors has sent us some information just today regarding private property and how the city might be involved in private property issues, and that's something that's going to have to go back to council in terms of policy and how we deal with it. The Municipal Act is very specific now. There were changes made to the Municipal Act regarding trees, what's deemed to be an adjacent tree on a road lawn. So it can actually be trees on private property, but if there's a danger of that tree becoming or actually falling onto a road lawns, endangering the public, endangering hydro lines, this sort of thing, it's deemed to be an adjacent tree. There is a report coming forward to council on our new tree bylaw, and it actually addresses all the issues related to trees. I think originally your question at the last meeting of council was how to deal with possibly securing some of this wood for other purposes. We haven't prepared that report as yet. We're still dealing with the tree bylaw. So hopefully we can address all these issues at one time and bring that forward. But it's going to take some time. The simple answer is that we can't immediately deal with all the trees that are dead out there with the resources and both the manpower and the budgets that are available to us at the present time. Worst first.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. That's fine. Members of council, further new business? Councilors' items. Members of staff, any updates? With none, have you thought about it? Okay, I'll bring it up now. Members of council, I got one item I want to bring up, and I did forward it to you earlier. It's an item, and Mr. Hanson, just to give you a heads up and get your thoughts in order before I ask you the question, it is about the tender in TAC lighting. I think I forwarded you a copy as well. Members of council, I did forward this to you, and it was a request by the principal of Intact Lighting Group. And I just leaned over to Ashley and asked her if this should be dealt with in closed session. I always prefer not, but and she agreed with me. Thank you. But you all seen the email. It is actually a request to give a one-week extension to a contract that I'm assuming was bid by this company, or was going to be bid by this company. And of course, they have cited that not enough time has been given for this contract to be bidded upon. And of course, with all due respect, and I'm just reading from the email, it is in the best interest of the town to have a competitive bid. Please allow this much-needed extension. So I did want to bring it to council tonight because there may be some time sensitivity attached to it. And with that, I am going to ask Mr. Hanson his thoughts on it, the process, as well as where we're at right now with the tenders coming in. Mr. Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, time sensitivity is gone by. I mean, the tenders were opened at 2 o'clock this afternoon on the tender. There is a process that we follow for the tenders. There is contact people on the tender whereby the proponents have to contact these people and actually ask for an extension. I forwarded this email I received about 5 o'clock this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, to our staff to inquire as to whether an extension was actually requested by this particular contractor. I'm not aware that they have. That is the process. They should have last week or at whatever point in time in the tender that they required more time, they should have made this request to staff. And we can grant these extensions as required, whatever is reasonable. The tender closing today, there were 3 bids submitted for the street lighting process, and those will be reviewed and brought forward to the next meeting of council with the recommendation. That's the status of it now. So, Mr. Mayor, in dealing with this extension, it's too late.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Questions or comments, members? With none? And before we go on, I do want to take this opportunity as well, after a very successful Canal Days, to give much appreciation and extend much appreciation to all those folks that made it happen. And of course, once again, showcased the city of Port Colborne, quite frankly, I can say proudly now to the world. Maybe not 10 or 15 years ago, but today in 2014, with a team of volunteers, and I say a team because there was just a drove of them this year that came out to really help from all ages, all walks of life, and from many communities throughout not only Port Colborne, but throughout the region and abroad. Our sponsors as well, who came aboard once again with a lot of commitment and dedication to the event. And lastly, but I think equally as of importance, is our staff. There's no question, Harry, your staff in particular, but also Ron with your staff in operations and parks, just came out with, again, I know it was a tiring weekend and everyone slept well on Tuesday, I'm sure, but to them as well, a great big appreciation to all of you. Chief, to your staff as well, I know the volunteers especially were out taking on the duties of emergency services, and to them as well, I want to express my appreciation. To the folks in the community, I know sometimes it can drive you absolutely crazy when you have cars parking in your driveways, which they're not supposed to be, or in front of your driveways, and of course the amount of people, and of course some of the noise, and some of the discomfort in general. I do want to thank you for your patience as well, because it can be sometimes a problem. but to you, thank you for your patience and of course your involvement in the event. And of course all those people from across that can be reached by COGECO that came in from out of town to enjoy the festivities. To you, I hope you enjoyed yourself and hopefully we'll see you back here next year. to enjoy all of what we have to offer. And finally, to the committee, to the Canal Days Committee, a team that is going to start meeting again probably within a week's time to go over a postmortem to what happened at this year's event, and of course start preparing for next year's event. We thank you as well. So great job by all. The weatherman was somewhat good to us, I think, for the most part, except for Saturday night. Everything went off without a hitch. We've seen a lot of great things happen. We had a few blips that we're going to learn from, and hopefully next year it won't happen again. But again, great event, great times, and once again showcased the city of Port Colborne as being that multimodal hub that takes full advantage of the different methods of transportation, including the canal, to our investment community. And for that, again, thank you. So with no further new business and no further updates from staff, I see no head nod, we'll now move on to the adoption of the minutes. I do have one set of minutes. The 18th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated July 28, 2014. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, as well as a seconder, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. And finally, the items requiring separate discussion. We do have one item here. Councillor Bodner, item 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the email correspondence from Matthew Sorge requesting an amendment in order to permit the keeping of chickens within the urban area be referred to the Director of Planning and Development for report, and that the memorandum from Shannon LaRock Planner read chickens in the urban area be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Kenny. Questions or comments? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this has ruffled a few feathers in the city, so we have to, hey, that's the best I got. What do you? So obviously then we're going to expect a report back soon on this. I'll ask staff.
Mr. Aquilina.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bodner, absolutely, we'll bring a report forward to Council. One thing I'd just like to remind Council of, we received a memo from Shannon LaRock. Kind of gives you a whole history of where chickens are presently allowed and where they're not allowed. Council also has another policy that deals with chickens or livestock within the urban area. We do have a new zoning bylaw that is going to be before Council. So Council, you have to wait for my report, but one thing that Council may want to consider, deal with this through the actual new zoning bylaw update, instead of having a site-specific matter being addressed through the report to Council. My report will say all this, but it will be before Council relatively soon. I understand that the chickens are no longer on the property, but my inclination is to let's wait to decide this matter as part of the new official plan, new zoning bylaw update.
Thank you. Councillor? That's fine. Members of Council, further questions or comments? With none, so just for clarification, we're going to look at this through the new report. This is all, it's not just chickens, it's going to be all livestock. And instead of having site-specific, we're going to have it all wrapped up under one bylaw.
Mr. Mayor, what we will do in my report, I will indicate that the request is dealing with chickens. Council will then have to give direction as to what you would like to do. Apply the amendment to all livestock or within the urban area, or just solely for chickens. The recommendation report or the information report, which some direction will be asked from Council, what you would like to do. Again, if there is any future change, Council will have to also revisit its policy because it's very restrictive as for livestock in the urban area.
So members of Council, I wanted that repeated because at the end of the day, we do have these requests come up often before you. We had the horse situation a few years ago on Clally West or Clally East. We have the chicken request now, and we're going to have, I'm sure, further requests well into the future. So I'm glad, Dan, that you're going to do it that way, so that way we can look at the broader issue, but as well as the specific issue that's come before us. So, Mr. Aquilina.
Just one thing to add, Mr. Mayor. The Committee of Adjustment recently dealt with a matter about livestock within the hamlet areas, which is still considered a settlement area. Again, these come up, as you mentioned, periodically. That is before the Ontario Municipal Board, and my report will actually indicate on that same agenda night what council would like to do with all these appeals, and one of those being that Ontario Municipal Board appeal for the keeping of livestock, particularly a horse or horses within the hamlet area.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Members of council, further questions, comments? With none, okay, your pleasure. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? With none, if I can ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda, please. Councillor Danch. I have to get you on the minutes here. Seconder, Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. No recorded vote, Frank? No recorded vote? Members of council will now move on to the regular meeting of council portion of this evening's agenda. Madam Clerk, if there are any addendum items.
Thank you. None this evening.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, can I have a motion to confirm the agenda, please? Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Disclosures of interest? With none, and noted by the clerk. That's great. Members of council, I do have 3 sets of minutes here. I'll do them in block if you don't mind. I do have the first set of minutes, which are the 20th meeting special of council dated July 28th, 2014. The 21st meeting regular of council dated July 28th, 2014. And finally, the minutes of the 22nd meeting special of council dated July 30th, 2014. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Danch, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to the items requiring a separate discussion. The items that are listed on the agenda. Councillor Bodnar, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, there was an item by a realtor, case Populaire, to be discussed. We didn't pull that or anything. Is the realtor in the audience, or?
No, you're right. There was a request. I believe it's item 13 on the agenda, and the request did come from a realtor here in the area that has in fact requested that council consider the rebate of the minor variance fees for Case Populaire building over on Clawley Street East. You are correct. Nobody did lift it, and it was to receive for information only. But by all means, if you want to lift it and discuss it, I would actually encourage that, because it is a request, and I think instead of just receiving it for information, council should make a decision on it, yes or no, versus simply receiving it for information.
Sure, I make that request.
Lift that, okay. That's great. So we have
14, I believe, Mr. Mayor.
It's item 13 on the agenda.
Oh, 13, sorry, yep.
Members of council, any further items? With no further items, we'll move on to accepting the remainder of the items. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Going to the item that is lifted, Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That correspondence from Sylvie Cloutier, sorry, General Manager, Case Populaire, Welland, re 283-287 Colborne Street, request to waive minor variance fee be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded by Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met with the realtor previously, and council will recall this is not the first time that this matter has been before council for special zoning approval. Council originally council had originally dealt with a rezoning application for a convenience store for this particular property. Then council dealt with a group home application, which was approved as well. We heard from the comments of the neighbors with regards to the convenience store application. I would just like to make the comment that the taxpayer should not be funding development applications. It is up to the developer to do so. The comments that have been made by the realtor with regards to what application should be brought forward, that is a debate that I would like to have with that realtor, because there is a proper process. The variance or the actual rezoning. To permit uses on a property should be by way of rezoning, not by variance. But I make the comment, the general taxpayer should not be funding any development application.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Councillor?
Thank you. Just what he said. Absolutely. I would say that we simply let the Realtor know that we're not willing to, to make any exemption to this, and that he needs to go through, or they need to go through the proper process.
Further comments or questions? Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would echo what Dan and Councillor Bodner said. This fee should be taken care of through the sale of the property, and we shouldn't be involved with that, and the taxpayer shouldn't have to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments? Mr. Aquilina, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to make one comment. This property is within the urban residential area of the municipality. It's not within a commercial area. Neighborhood commercial uses are supported and permitted on this particular property. Those uses are there to serve the actual neighboring community. The use that's being proposed, in my opinion, is not one that serves that residential area. It's more of something that should be in the downtown. And to permit other commercial uses on that property goes against the city's official plan. That would need to be changed to actually bring forward any other uses commercial on that particular property. But if an application comes forward with a minor variance application, we can't stop that. That application would go forward and be circulated to the neighbors, and it would be ultimately the Committee of Adjustment to make that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. And that's a good point. Actually, I was going to bring that issue up because I did have the opportunity to meet with both the proponent as well as Mr. Pedro, and to say it was an interesting meeting would be an understatement. But at the end of the day, I think for the most part, because there was some criticism levied against the city in comparison to other municipalities with respect to neighborhood commercial. And I tried to explain to the folks, with all due respect, that if it was in fact within a neighborhood commercial area, then we wouldn't be having this discussion, nor the application wouldn't be needed. But because it is or outside of the neighborhood commercial area, then of course it is needed, because this property was actually zoned very specific because it was outside neighborhood commercial. And that's a great point. And when there's some criticism levied onto the city in comparison to other municipalities, we do have to be talking about oranges and oranges, not apples and oranges. And quite frankly, the criticism with respect to stating that the city of Port Colborne is different is not true. We are the same if it's comparing neighborhood commercial to neighborhood commercial. But when it's outside, it's pretty consistent throughout the region with respect to these rezonings being needed because of the specialty zoning that has been placed on these properties in the past, in this case, it being a bank versus others. Now, I do want to go to the flip side here. The flip side here is that they have made 3 applications because they have tried to sell the property 3 different times, 3 different uses. Part of the condition of sale of the property, was it twice? Isn't this the 3rd time?
We haven't had an application.
Once the application is made, it will be the 3rd time. And this is their call, fair game. But at the end of the day, part of the condition of sale of the property is, in fact, that it's zoned appropriately for the person that's going to be buying the property. First time around, they went for rezoning, cost them a fee. With that, they walked. The second proponent came along, put an offer in, they made an application, cost them a fee, they walked. And now there's going to be a 3rd application made. And of course, with that, a different rezoning. So that's, in fairness to them, I did want to bring that up because that's what the discussion did entail. Basically, they've been paying a lot of money. They've paid close to $10,000 now, if I'm not mistaken, or they're going to pay close to that much based on the applications that are made. And of course, with that, still haven't solidified or ratified a buyer yet. So that's their concern, and hence the reason why they're here, or the letter's here this evening to ask for that waiving. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just maybe a point of clarification. The second application for the group home was not paid by the case. It was paid by the actual developer of the property. That is my understanding. When council first changed the zoning of this property from a bank, they permitted a convenience store. They also permitted a pet grooming establishment. Other commercial, neighborhood commercial type uses were also permitted on this property. A day nursery. So it wasn't just specifically a convenience store. There was other uses that were part of that application that council did approve. But again, they were neighborhood commercial in nature, and that application was presented by a solicitor on behalf of the case. So the second application was not paid for by the case.
It was the actual developer of the property. Okay, good, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. I can pass that on to myself. Thank you, Dan. Members of council, any further questions or comments on this? So, Councillor Bodnar, you are making a recommendation that we decline or deny the request for waiving of the minor variance fee?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second to that, please? Councillor Desmarais? With that, any further comments or questions? Any comments or clarification or questions from staff? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. Members of council, we're now going to move on to proclamations. I do have one proclamation. You couldn't cut it down. This proclamation is on behalf of the South Niagara Life Centers Ministries, that whereas South Niagara Life Centers Ministries' vision statement is helping people resolve life crisis, issues, and problems, and whereas South Niagara Life Centers Ministries, the SNLM, counseling, health, and wellness services are freely offered to all people at 143 Gilmore Road in the town of Fort Erie, 5 days a week, and in their contact office here in Port Colborne at 26B Charlotte Street, 1 half-day a week, Wednesday afternoons. And whereas South Niagara Life Ministries is a multi-counseling service provider offering 29 categories of free and confidential health and wellness services and programs to all who inquire. These are in a variety of areas of crisis and emergency situations needing timely counsel and ongoing programming. Key ongoing areas of counsel are marriage and family relationships, anger and conflict resolution, depression and anxiety, budgeting, child apprehension assistance, parenting, food and clothing resources through their Earn As You Learn life skill classes. Project Keepsake Sexual Health and Wellness Curriculum Abuse, Self-Cutting, Suicide Intervention, and more are also offered at the center. And whereas South Niagara Life Center Life Ministries acknowledges its need to cultivate ongoing public awareness regarding opportunities to serve the public and the services themselves freely offered to all. And whereas South Niagara Life Center Ministries has a website at www.snlmcouncil, that's council with an EL.ca, to offer information. And whereas South Niagara Life Center Ministries invites guests to attend their public awareness campaign kickoff on Saturday, September 27th, being held in the Fort Erie in conjunction with South Niagara Life Center Ministries, Sugar Bowl Walk and Roll fundraising campaign at the Fort Erie Library, Sugar Bowl Park from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and their October South Niagara Life Center Ministries awareness tour at the Fort Erie location Monday, October 20th at 4 p.m., and their awareness campaign finale on Friday, October 24th, being held here in the city of Port Colborne in conjunction with South Niagara Life Center Ministries Hope for Life fundraising dinner event at the Brebeuf Hall at 300 College Street East from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Please come as their guest and consider bringing others by calling 905-871-0236. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, proclaim the month of October 2014 as South Niagara Life Center Ministries Awareness Month here in the city of Port Colborne. So, mover and seconder, please. What are you hesitating for? Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Desmarais. Any questions or comments? With none, members of council, your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Members, we do have some minutes of boards, commissions, and committees, and I'll do them in block if you don't mind. The first set of minutes are from the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum meeting dated June 17th, 2014, and the second being the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting dated July 30th, 2014, and you will note those are in draft form. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodnar. Seconder, Councillor Danch. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? With no notices of motion, we'll move on to the introduction of the bylaws. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 61168-214 being a bylaw to establish a permitting system for parking of vehicles on designated highways within the city. Bylaw 61178-314 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 608-248-14 being a bylaw to establish a system for administrative penalties respecting the stopping, standing, and parking of vehicles. Bylaw 61188-414 being a bylaw to delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer and the Director of Planning and Development under Section 275 of the Municipal Act for the purposes of restricted acts after nomination day. Bylaw 61198-514 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4588-11904 being a bylaw to regulate noise and to amend bylaw 5721-15211 and bylaw 57803512. And finally, bylaw 61208-614 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 4310-14602, being a bylaw prescribing on and off-street parking for persons with disabilities within the city of Port Colborne.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Dange, Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Confirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 61218-714 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its special and regular meetings of August 11, 2014.
Thank you, Ashley. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Kenny, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. You guys are throwing me off here because we got like only 5 here tonight. We just barely made quorum. All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Members of council, I'm not going to ask for a motion to go into closed session. So I'll need a motion to go into closed session to proceed with item A, minutes of the closed session portion of the July 28th, 2014 regular meeting of council. B, the verbal report from myself regarding correspondence received by myself on July 24th concerning the potential disposition of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And C, Department of Planning and Development Report 2014-56 concerning the potential disposition of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or by the local board. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Bodner. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. With that, we'll now adjourn in closed session. And to all you folks, have a wonderful week.